to give yourself a point. So you need to get a sheet of paper so that you can keep track of your answers. So yes is a point, no is 0 points. And when we've gone through all of the questions, you will need to tally up your points and hold on to that number. And toward the end of the presentation, I will tell you what your score means. So let's go ahead and get started. So first question, do you find yourself spending more time on your cell or smartphone than you realize? Do you find yourself spending more time on your smartphone than you realize? Number 2, do you find yourself mindlessly passing time on a regular basis by just staring at your smartphone? And number 3, do you lose track of time sometimes when you're on your phone? Yeah, I'm seeing some smiles. Yes, sometimes we do. Number 4, do you find yourself spending more time texting, tweeting, or emailing as opposed to talking to people in person? And what I like to remind people is to think pre-COVID, because obviously when we went into quarantine, a lot of this changed. So prior to COVID, what did you do? All right. And next is number 5. Has the amount of time you've been spending on your cell phone or smartphone been increasing? Number 6, do you wish that you were a little less involved with your cell or your smartphone? Okay, number 7, do you sleep with your phone? I've yet to encounter anyone who has it under their pillow, but most people tend to have it right next to them on the nightstand. Do you find yourself viewing and answering texts, tweets, and emails all hours of the day and night, even when it means interrupting other things that you are doing? Number 9, do you text, email, tweet, or surf while driving, or simply doing other activities that require your focused attention and concentration? Do you feel that your use of your phone decreases your productivity at times? Do you feel like your smartphone is a big distraction? Sometimes it keeps you from doing what you need to do. Do you feel reluctant to be without it, even for a short time? Do you start feeling antsy if you don't have it? And especially, do you feel ill at ease or uncomfortable when you accidentally leave it in the car or at home? When you eat your meals, is your cell or smartphone part of the table place setting? Does it sit there with you while you eat? And when your phone rings, beeps, or buzzes, do you feel an intense urge to check for texts, tweets, emails, or some other type of update? And do you find yourself mindlessly checking your phone many times a day, grabbing it and looking at it, even when you know there is likely nothing new or important to see? All right, I'm going to start by talking about how much time we spend with our smartphones. And again, let me emphasize that this is all pre-COVID data. And we know, of course, that phone and iPad, tablet usage went up during COVID out of necessity. But this, again, I like to remind everyone is our pre-COVID numbers. Okay, so this data right here is from Common Sense Media, which is a reliable source of information on technology use, especially when it comes to children. We know that 98% of households with young children have smartphones. And of course, that number holds for households generally. Teens, and again, prior to COVID, averaged about 7.5 hours a day, and note on entertainment screen media. So this does not include any type of screen use for homework. Tweens, which is what we call the group between 8 and 12, spend an average of 5 hours, a day on entertainment media. Adults, this figure actually combines screen time for work and personal use. But for adults, it was 9.5 hours. Lots of time. Now, this graph shows you how much changed in a 4-year period between 2015 and 2019. In 2015, 77% of teens had a phone. And as of 2019, you see that number jumped to 91%. And with so many people across the nation attending school from home, I think it's safe to say that almost all teens have devices. It became a necessity during COVID. And I certainly know that all of my college students have phones, and many of them actually use their phones to do their schoolwork in addition to Zoom meetings. So smartphones are a big source of conflict in families. And interestingly, it works both ways. Half of teens will tell you that they think they are addicted to their phones. And 78% of teens check their phones at least once an hour. We also know that roughly the same number of teens look at their phone in the middle of the night. And parents are saying they struggle and they fight with their kids about phones, and an unbelievable 56% admit to looking at their own devices when they drive. Upwards of 80% of parents have taken some type of step to limit their child's phone use. So while digital and technology addiction are not officially recognized in what's called the DSM-5, that's the Diagnostic Manual in Psychiatry, they have not been recognized. It does not mean that they won't be. We think that at some point in the future, they likely will. But we certainly know our technologies have been designed to be habit forming, if not addictive. Many of the apps on our phones follow what is called the hook model, and it's a model created by a gentleman named Nir Eyal while he was a professor in the business school at Stanford. The model is very similar to BJ Fogg's model that he taught in the Stanford Persuasive Lab. So Nir advised his students, who later became tech creators, to make products that used hook cycles of trigger, action, variable reward, and then investment. If you would like to learn a little bit more on technology design, you can read Irresistible by Adam Alter. He's a professor at NYU. Or just sit down and watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix. I will tell you this documentary was among the 10 most popular programs, period, on Netflix back in September. So, social media use and teen mental health. Most researchers in the field would say that there is certainly a correlation between social media use and issues with teens and mental health. When it comes to social media, it appears that our girls are more vulnerable than our boys. But there are studies that show that the correlation is weak. One of the things that we like to talk about at the Digital Wellness Institute is the importance of what you do with social media. It's not a matter of just do you use it or not use it, or how many hours you use it, but what's really important is what you do with it. We know from research too that those who are already very prone to depression and anxiety, they are the most at risk when it comes to social media. So here is some data from the 2020 Step Forward survey. Step Forward is a division of the Community Foundation. And this is unpublished data, though it will be published more than likely in Frontiers in Psychiatry this summer. Step Forward, again, is a community program focused on the development of at-risk youth. And there is a teen advisory council made up of students from every high school. And last year, the teens decided to conduct a teen mental health study, and they received permission from the Caddo Parish school system to have the study administered by teachers in class. Of the 10,000 high school students in Caddo Parish, 5,000 completed the survey. So that's a really high number. And as you can see here from our findings, 96% of the students in Caddo Parish use social media, with Instagram being the most popular. One of the questions asked students how much time they spend on social media. Unfortunately, the survey did not include a category above 2 hours, but as you can see from the bar graph above, more than half use social media 2 or more hours a day. There is one correlation that is especially interesting to me, and it is has been talked about a great deal by Jean Twenge, the author of iGen. Here is a graph from the 2019 World Happiness Report, which is an annual publication of the United Nations. And note the decline in happiness among teenagers in the United States that started around 2012. I'll note that this graph takes us through 2017, but look at the precipitous decline here in happiness among all three groups in 2012. Again, that is a magic number. Next, we have a graph from the Journal of Abnormal Psychology, which also shows an increase in depressive episodes among young adults ages 18 to 25. And note how this graph begins to steadily climb in 2012 as well. And now we're back again to the World Happiness Report, where we have the internet hours graphed alongside sleep, social interaction, and happiness. Again, note what happens here in 2012. Internet hours shoot up. Let me go to 2012 right here. Internet hours shoot up while happiness right here starts plummeting. A couple of other interesting tidbits. In 2012, Facebook reached 1 billion users, and it is the year when the majority of Americans finally owned a smartphone. Interestingly, too, I learned in a course I took over in the UK that is also the year that the search term mental health started increasing. So now let's go back to our Caddo teens. More than half of the respondents reported problems with stress and anxiety. Close to 45% also said that they had struggled with depression. So what are some of the specific correlations between mental health and social media? 45% say they feel overwhelmed by the drama, and 40% say they feel pressure to post only good things. But the most interesting data here, in my opinion, is the research showing that girls who spend 5 or more hours a day on social media are 3 times as likely to be depressed. In our Caddo student data, girls jumped out as well. One of the strongest correlations, by the way, was between females with body dysmorphia and use of Pinterest. Now, we have to acknowledge that social media can have value if it's used in healthy ways. And during the pandemic quarantines, it did become a lifeline for many teens to stay in touch with their friends. We're increasingly focusing on teaching young people how to use social media in a way that can foster real connection and help them avoid the pitfalls, with social comparison being by far the most dangerous. So now let's look at your smartphone test results. If you score between 1 and 2, then your behavior is considered normal. And I will be stunned if anyone on today scored between 1 and 2, because I have not met anyone who's done that yet. 3 to 4, your behavior is leaning toward problematic or compulsive use. 5 or above, it is likely that you may have a problematic or compulsive smartphone use pattern. And if you're 8 or higher, then you might consider seeing a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a psychotherapist who specializes in behavior addictions for a consultation. And this is not meant to be a joke. I chuckle when I read this, but it was created by Dr. David Greenfield, who is an assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine. So a couple of things that we need to understand about social media that's really important. Have you ever wondered why you don't pay for social media? That's because you are not the customer of social media. For social media companies like Facebook, you are the product. Technology companies are selling our attention in what has become an attention economy. The more time we spend on our devices, the more ads we see, and the more money they make. And as you all know, companies like Facebook, which also owns Instagram, are extremely wealthy companies. Their goal is not to harm you, but their goal is to maximize time on device. And it happens that that is not usually in your best interest. So what do we do about it? The field of digital wellness, or digital well-being as some call it, is about helping people develop relationships with their technologies that enhance their well-being. The Digital Wellness Institute is the pioneer in this field and has created what you see right here, the Digital Flourishing Wheel. The Digital Institute takes an empowerment approach because there are things that we can do to improve our relationships with our technologies, which most people would agree we simply can't get rid of. Rather than rely on willpower to change our habits, I've done a great deal of study on habits. I'm going to give you what I call speed bumps. And basically, these are little tricks that will interrupt the triggers and the dopamine hits that you get when you use your media and make these undesirable habits a little less convenient. So what can you do? First thing I like to tell people to do is turn off their notifications. So what are your notifications? Here you see a Facebook notification. Turn it off. Go into your settings, turn off the sound that comes with social media. But a notification is not limited to the sound. The little red dot that you see is also considered a notification. And if you're like most people, when you see that dot, you feel pulled to click and see what's behind it. Also, limit your home screen on your phone to apps that you use for what we call in and out tasks. You look at your calendar, you turn on a map, you use your camera to take a picture. Those apps like social media apps or games or shopping apps that tend to be distracting and that you tend to get lost in, take those off of your primary screen and bury them in other pages. Here is a recommendation that I will be honest with you, I can't follow because I consider it way too painful. And that is to lose the color in your phone. It's called going grayscale. And believe it or not, when you remove the color, your brain will feel different. You will no longer get the reward that color gives us in the form of dopamine. It's fairly difficult to do this, but if you search in Google or any other search engine for information, you can find out how to do it. But I will tell you this, you'll be surprised how disappointing your phone feels when you don't have color. Another reason I will say not to do this is there are some things where color is essential, such as looking at the radar on your weather app. So you will lose some of that if you don't have color. And then finally, if you're really getting serious about this, and I will tell you, I did this a year ago and mighty glad I did, delete social media apps from your phone. Now, does that mean you're deleting your account? No. Does it mean that you can't go to social media on your phone? No, it simply means that it is more difficult for you to get to it. So you become less likely to do so. I kept social media on my tablet, so I still am able to access it and do access it a couple of times a day. Slot machine apps, notice I've referenced social media and slot machine apps. That's anything that sucks you in without providing any real return. It could be Candy Crush. It could be news. It could be a local news outlet. It can be a shopping app. Those are some of the ones that sometimes get me. And then finally, we also want to get the smartphone out of our bedrooms. Now, immediately when I say this, people will be, oh, no, I can't because my phone is my alarm. Well, it doesn't have to be. You can go on Amazon and buy yourself a really inexpensive, old-timey alarm clock and put it there in its place. So the benefit of taking a smartphone from your bedroom is huge. No more checking the phone in the middle of the night. No more looking at your phone first thing in the morning. And probably the most important thing is that the blue light emitted by your phone, and when I say blue light, I'm talking about color temperature of light, closely resembles the color temperature of daylight. And so when you are looking at your phone or other technology, a tablet, you are seeing a color of light that is telling your brain it's daytime. So if you look at this right before you're going to bed, your brain will be confused and you may have trouble going to sleep. So not looking at a screen for the last couple of hours of your day is a good way to help your brain begin to ease into sleep mode. And that is it. I am happy to take questions. Anybody have any? Sandy? Bianca? Well, how about I ask how you
No, I mean, this is Sandy. No, I mean, I just think it makes you stop and think. You know, we all rely on our cell phones so much. And especially these days, since you've got so many Zoom meetings, I've actually sat on a Zoom meeting with both my computer and that. So, but it makes you stop and think. And I appreciate you doing this because sometimes we just need to have a realization of why are we living by our phones?
Yes, in fact, one of the things I recently had my students do, and I did it as well, because I'm teaching digital well-being, as Tim said, this quarter, is we have a home screen that we use that we got from Catherine Price, who wrote the book, How to Break Up with Your Phone. It's a really good book. And the screen says, what for, why now, and what else? And it's designed when you pick up your phone to make you stop and say, what am I picking this up for? To look at Facebook. Why am I doing it right now? Because I'm in the grocery store line. What else could I do? Perhaps visit with the person checking out my groceries. One of the biggest downsides to our phones and our technologies is the loss of authentic interactions and connections. As Brene Brown, one of my favorite researchers, says, we are hardwired for human connection. And human connection in a virtual environment is not as fulfilling as face-to-face. And if you use social media, especially not for human connection, but for comparison, if you look at pictures and say, oh my gosh, you know, her Christmas card is, or her Christmas family's picture looks better, or she looks better, or, you know, then that's a surefire recipe for unhappiness. So one of the big things I'm trying to teach my students how to do is to recognize the unhealthy uses, avoid them, and use their technologies to keep in touch with people and build real connections. And my husband is sitting there looking at me and Tim, I did not use you as an example for anything, and that's only because you're sitting there, because you are normally my favorite example of things.
Not to do, right? I am the cautionary tale.
Yep, you are the, here's what Tim does, don't do like Tim.
Story of my life. Okay, any other questions, comments?
Anybody want to share their score?
No, but thank you so much for doing this for us.
You're most welcome, Sandy.
It's always good to see you.
All right, well, just a reminder that this is the second in a series. Oops, I don't know which screen I'm sharing here. Let's make sure I'm sharing the right screen. There we go. And that we have next week, we'll be having Overcoming Digital Addiction with Clint Davis Counseling. And then on June 18th, we'll be doing Cultivating a Strengths-Based Workplace with Craig Gilliam of Gilliam and Associates. So again, these are free. We hope you'll sign up for them, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks again for joining us. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Johnette.